Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Go Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Janvalabha Girivardhari. Go Jai Gopi Janvalabha Girivardhari. Go Yashudanandjana Brajajaranjana. Go Yashudanandjana Brajajaranjana. Yamunatira Banachari. Go Jaya Munatira Vanachari. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gora Govinda. Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gora Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gora Hare Rama Rama Rama. Srila Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada. Jai Guru Deva Srila Guru Deva Srila Guru Deva Jai Guru Deva. Jai Gora Haribo Haribo Nitai Gora Haribo. Gora Nitai Go Haribo Nitai Gora Haribo. Gora Premanande. Narayanam Namaskrityam Narun Chaiva Naru Tamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Chatu Dayu Muridait Nasta Abhadresu Nityam Bhavatam Sevayam Bhagavati Utamas Luke Bhakti Bhavaiti Naistike Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, welcome to today's hearing. Readings will be taken from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 29, text number 20. Text number 25 through 45. Okay. How many of us are here? Okay. Okay, it's Grace Madhavan Prabhu. You're welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you.
At a certain time yesterday, we had a glitch. We could not get the connection anymore. I was cut off from my end. And abruptly, we have to stop at that point. So, sorry about that. So, we'll take a continuation from, can you recall the last text we were yesterday?
I think it should be 25. I think 25. We started from 20, and ended up around 25, if I'm correct. Not 25.
Okay, taking from text 25, I will take the first look, and after which we have a rotation. The Sanskrit text I read.
Excuse me, Prabhu.
Ishvara mam swam karma krit Yavana Virashwa Hridi Sarva Bhutesu Avastitam. Translation. Probably we're trying to say something.
Yesterday, when we had that glitch, we discussed among ourselves, and the conclusion was that we should keep to time because some of us haven't been temple president. We have especially on Sunday.
Okay.
We have other time.
You fix a time to do what?
That we should finish on time. That is 12 o'clock, the scheduled time.
Okay, to reschedule today's class.
No, what we said that we should be able to finish on schedule by 12.
Okay. All right. Okay, I've taken note of that. All right. Okay, so I take the translation to that text. Performing his prescribed duty, one should worship the deities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead until one realizes my presence in his own heart and in the hearts of other living entities as well. Papa Prabhupada says, worship of the deities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is prescribed herewith, even for persons who are simply discharging their prescribed duties. So there are prescribed duties for the different social classes of men, the Brahmanas, the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and the Sudras, and for the different actions, the Brahmanas, the Grihasthas, the Vanaprasthas, and the sciences. So one should worship the deities of the Lord until one appreciates the presence of the Lord in every living entity. In other words, one should not be satisfied simply by discharging his duties properly. He must realize his relationship and the relationship of all other living entities with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if he does not understand this, then even though his discharge of his prescribed duties, even though he discharges his prescribed duties properly, it is to be understood that he is simply laboring without profit. So the word Shwa Karma Krit in this verse is very significant. Shwa Karma Krit is one who engages in discharging his prescribed duties. It is not that one has become a devotee of the Lord or who engages in devotional service should give up his prescribed duties. No, no one should be lazy under the plea of devotional service and has to execute devotional service according to his prescribed duties. So Shwa Karma Krit means that one should discharge the duties prescribed for him without neglect. Okay. So here I think we were dealing on this issue yesterday. We often have devotees who want to ambush their laxity or laziness under the framework of discharging devotional service and then give up on their active involvement in life. I think most so for the mere fact that those who stays in the ashram have the coverage of free provisions to their daily needs. They have free food, they have free space to sleep. I think such people should have an experience in Maya or in India as a whole. Every devotee pays for their accommodation. Every devotee also pays for their food. So there you can see that there is no evasion. You see devotional service in reality, because when I saw it to be very practical, because you see the devotional institution is a school. It is a platform where we come to learn awareness from ignorance to reality. So it is not an evasive excuse for one to give up on active service involvement. It is eminent. Prabhupada mentioned in the Gita, said it is, Krishna himself, he says, speaking in chapter 3 of the Gita, Kama Yuga, I said it, performing of prescribed duty is eminent for everybody, because simply to keep the body and soul together, one must actively get involved in social conventions to be able to earn a living, that they can be able to keep the body and soul together. So sometimes we misunderstood the gift of devotional service to be an excuse for us to abandon our active involvement in secular duties and then just stay put. But before we know, we become lazy to active involvement. So we must not do so. And we find out that nowadays, a lot of devotees are beginning to realize that we need money to be able to execute devotional service in the stance that it should be. And then a lot of people are going back to active involvement. We are supposed to, while discharging our prescribed duty, it should be in accordance with devotional service. That is, imbibing the principles of devotional service, then we act accordingly. Because when we act, if we are given to social service, we don't have a direction, don't have directives on how we should do things, certain things we should not do, certain things we should do. So devotional service serves as a guide while discharging our active service or conventional duties. So it is devotional service on its own does not stop us from getting involved in devotional service. So this is what is saying, that even though one may perform his devotional service so perfectly and without having a means of active involvement, because you need proceeds from active involvement to fund the liabilities of devotional service. And this also will help us from looking up to others as our makers. No, we shouldn't be that dependent on others to make our day. We should be proactive enough to be able to raise the necessary finance. We should strategize. I can remember in the early days, I think early 90s, I have witnessed, on going to Port Harcourt, I've witnessed Ganga Prashad Prabhu operating a mill. Sometimes I didn't know where he was getting the grains from, but later I discovered I was traveling all the way to the north to get various kinds of grain, blend them, and package them. So the temple also suddenly became a storefront for all the Indians to purchase their grain. So by this dint, he was making a lot of money, and this money was also with the intelligence coined from devotional principles, which has given him the directives on how to the utility of this money. So he was investing the money directly in the Lord's service. So by so doing, he was able to balance both the financial demands and the devotional demands. So our strategy should be built on this platter that we, while discharging devotional service, ideas should not be giving up on our social or active involvement. We should think of whatever we can do to be able to balance the financial demands or needs guarding devotional service. Okay, so His Grace Kamal Laksha Prabhu is here to bless us today. Prabhu, you are welcome.
Hare Krishna, forgive me offenses. All glory to you.
Okay, Prabhu, having have your glorious presence today, immediately we cannot wait than to request you to read out, to chant text 26 of Canto 3, chapter 29, text 26 for our collective purification. Atmanasya pra sasyapi. Okay, you have your Bhagavatam with you?
No.
Okay, I take up that. Atmanasya parasyapi ya karuti ataru daram tasya binadriso mrityu vedasde bayam ubanam. Okay, the translation says, as the blazing fire of death, I cause great fear to whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities because of differential outlook. Okay, so here the Lord was talking about that one, even despite discharging one's devotional service, one has to continue on the worship of the Chaviga, the deities in the temple, until one is able to realize the super soul dwelling in the body of every living entity. Yesterday we talked about the dual presentation of the Lord. The Lord is present in every living entity as a soul, one. Secondly, also as a super soul. Because here is in text 26, it says, whoever makes the least mistake of discriminating between himself and other living entities because of differential outlook, he says, as the blazing fire of death, I will cause great fear to whoever does that. In Papa Prabhupada says that there are bodily differentiations among all varieties of living entities, but a devotee should not distinguish between one living entity and another. And on such a basis, a devotee's outlook should be that both the soul and the super soul are equally present in all varieties of living entities. So the worship of the Chaviga is there to help us in relation to the Lord. Because if we don't learn how to relate with the Lord, what would we do when we go back home to God? The Lord had manifested the Chaviga to give us access to associating with him, to learn how to associate with him. And as we treat the Lord, early in the morning, we give the Lord Abhishek, we dress him, we decorate him with various ornaments, we feed the Lord, all of this. or let alone for the Lord might not be interested in all of these things, but to give access to give opportunity for the living entity to be able to create service relation with him. The Lord had made the manifestation of that Chavriga accessible. So in this sense, it's encouraged that amidst practicing our prescribed duties, one should also take up the worship of that Chavriga as serious as possible, to an extent that one can be able to come in realization of the Lord's presence in every living entity, both as a soul and as a super soul. Because the soul is part and parcel of the Lord. That's the representation of the Lord in every living entity. And also, as a super soul who witnesses the activities of the living entity, is also a representation of the Lord. So that gives a dual representation of the Lord in every living entity. Okay. At this point, we're enjoying His grace, Madhavan Prabhu, to help out with text 27. Madhavan Prabhu. His grace, Madhavan, please help out with text 27. Is Madhavan there with us, active? Okay, we're not hearing from Madhavan. I take up text 27 again.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu,
Hare
go
Krishna.
on. Yes.
Sorry, I've been having problem with my audio
Internet.
system, but I just got through
Okay.
now.
All right, please.
It's like
Come up with 27.
27.
Yes.
We passed that stage. We passed it. I just confused you. I think we got about something.
Yeah,
when
don't worry.
trying
We are on. Don't worry. We're not getting back at it.
All right.
As many times that we read,
Okay.
as many times that we
All
can
right.
chant the sloka, it is for our collective purification.
Okay. Okay, Prabhu. So, can I take 27?
Yes, take.
Okay, thank you. Atamama bhutesu vatasmana kratalayam ayajanadam manavyayam maitaya bhidina chakshusha.
Yes.
Translation. Therefore, though charitable gifts and attention, as well as true friendly behavior, and by viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me, who abide in all creatures as their very self.
Yes.
The purpose. It should not be misunderstood that because the super soul is dwelling within the heart of the living entity, the individual soul has become equal to him. The equality of the super soul and the individual soul is conceived by the impersonalist. Here it is distinctly mentioned that the individual soul should be recognized in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The method of worshiping the individual soul is described here as either giving charitable gifts or behaving in a friendly manner, free from any separatist outlook. The impersonalist sometimes accepts the poor individual soul as being Daridra Narayan, meaning that Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has become poor. This is a contradiction. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in all opulences. You can agree to live with a poor soul or even with an animal, but this does not make him poor. There are two Sanskrit words used here, Seva and Aya. Seva indicates that it's superior, and the Aya indicates one who gives charitable gifts or is compassionate towards an inferior. We cannot treat the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an inferior who is dependent on our charitable gifts. When we give charity, it's to a person who is inferior in his material and economic condition. Charity is not given to a rich man. Similarly, it's explicitly stated here that mana, respect, is offered to a superior, and charity is offered to an inferior. The living entities, according to different results of positive activities, may become rich or poor, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unchangeable. It's always full in fixed opulence. Treating the living entity equally does not mean treating him as one who will treat the Supreme Personality of Godhead Compassion and friendliness do not necessitate forcibly elevating someone to the exalted position of supreme personality of Godhead. We should not at the same time misunderstand that the super soul situated in the heart of an animal like a hog and the super soul situated in the heart of a learned Brahmana are different. The super soul in non-living entities is the same supreme personality of Godhead. By its omnipotency, it can live anywhere and it can create its Vaikuntha situation everywhere. That is its inconceivable potency. Therefore, when Narayana is living in the heart of a hog, it does not become a hog Narayan. It's always Narayan and it's unaffected by the body of the hog. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Okay, so this I think we have explicitly discussed yesterday. We're supposed to have started from text 28. So here, it's talking about what should be the mood and manner of our relation with devotees or with other living entities, regardless of what status they assume in a particular lifetime or what form of body they have taken up. That even here, that even when Narayan is inside the body of a hog, that does not reduce the status of Narayan to being a hog. Narayan is always Narayan, but because the Lord is not affected by association with material nature. So irrespective of whatever form the Lord had come to reside, either as a soul or as a super soul, that has not affected his status. And this have also stated what should be the mood and manner of our relation with other living entities. We talked about the case of preferential treatment, that this is all this is all based on material consideration. Because you see this person is well dressed, he's pulling in a big car, and then you feel like, well, lying down to worship him. Why? And then because the other person is approaching with tattered dresses and a skinny body and seems to be impoverished, then you think the person should be given a less consideration, forgetting that it is the same super soul residing in the body of the one who is posing as a rich man. It's the same super soul is also residing in the body of one who is representing himself as a poor man and impoverished person. So there should be that equity given to the basis of our understanding of the super soul and the soul is the same super soul and soul residing in all these bodies. And that should instigate a consideration that while considering giving reference to these living entities should be on our perspective should be on this equity, that yes, we should not be confused by the material body that they put forward, that it is the same super soul that is residing in this body, the same super soul, and therefore our mode of consideration and dealings with them should be on equity. So this is very eminent and has to impact seriously in our dealings as devotees with regards to other living entities and even other humans, most especially humans, like it was mentioned in the previous verses, that when we say they live in equity with living entities, does not mean that if a living entity takes the body of a tiger, it has to be kept side by side in the same room with us or living in the same closed space with us. No, but especially for you living entities with higher reasoning, and more so devotees, those who have come to identify with this Titania process, we must be very careful in our dealing with them. Otherwise, when we set forth preferential standards of giving differentiated service to different people, it could amount to some offenses. Okay, so we move up to 28. I take this look at 28. One of us are here. Okay, we're three here. I take a look at 28. Jivaswistahi ajavanam tata pranam brita sube tata sachita pravasras tata chendriya vritaya. Translation: the living entities are superior to inanimate objects, O Blessed Mother, and among them, the living entities who display life symptoms are better. And animals with developed consciousness are better than them. And better still are those who have developed sense perception. So unlike what I've just explained here, that in giving to our relation, status, and considerations with living entities, more so for living entities with developed sense perception, which are the human beings, we should be very careful in dispose of considerations and preferences we accord them. And then it says here, Prabhupada says in the previous verse, it was explained that living entities should be honored by charitable gift and friendly behavior. And in this verse and in the following verses, the description of different grades of living entities is given so that one can know when to behave friendly and when to give charity. So, for example, a tiger is a living entity, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Supreme Lord is living in the heart of the tiger as a super soul. But does this mean that we have to treat the tiger in a friendly manner? Certainly not. We have to treat him differently, giving him charity in the form of prasad, and the many sandy persons in the jungle do not treat the tiger in a friendly way, but they supply prasad foodstuff to them. The tiger comes, takes the prasad, takes the food and go away. So just as a dog does not, according to the Vedic system, a dog is not allowed to enter the house because their uncleanness, cats and dogs are not allowed within the apartment of a gentleman, but are so trained that they stay outside. The compassionate householder will supply prasad to the dogs and cats who eat outside and then go away. We must treat the lower living entities compassionately, but this does not mean that we have to treat them in the same way we treat other human beings. So the living being, the feelings of equality must be there, but the treatment should be discriminating, just how discrimination should be maintained. It's given in the following 6 verses concerning the different grades of living conditions. So I think this is very, very important in the life of we devotees, that despite the fact that the living entities maintain different bodies, the question of equity has to be maintained. But dexterity, the skill in dispose of or in discharge of our relation should be on what level of concern we give to different living entities, considering the body they have inhabited. Example given at the tiger, that despite the fact that the tiger is part and parcel of the Lord, being the soul being present in the tiger, and also the Lord residing in the body of the tiger as a witness to his activities, still does not give the ambience that the tiger has to be kept in the same room where we live. Otherwise, the tiger can manifest different moods, which may not be conducive for any gentleman to live with. So then, how do we detect what kind of relation we give to these living entities? For such living entities that may have some characters that may not suit our putting up with them in the same space, so we have to relate at distance. But more especially for living entities with higher sense of perception, such as human beings, which, because given to the level of evolution of every living entity, their rationale, their ability to reason good from bad differs. So we must learn our relation with the different entities based on their levels of involvement and sense of discrimination. To human beings especially, which are in the frame of co-devotees as we are, in every level of perception or involvement, that aspect of equity has to be maintained. That we don't despise the living entity for sake of maintaining lower bodies or whatever. We must always bear in mind that the living entities embodies the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and also the super soul also residing in them. And for that reason, we must relate with them accordingly, giving charity and all the rest. If it requires treating them from distance, then we should know by a sense of discretion how to relate with these different entities. Okay. Okay, Chitra Prabhu is here with us as well. Chitra Prabhu, please, can you help out with text 29? Is Chitra Prabhu actively involved with us here? Chitra Prabhu. Okay, Chitra Prabhu is not there. I take up text 29. Tatrapi sar spasa vi debya paravarasa vi dina debyo gunda vida srestas tata shabda vido varata. Translation says, among the living entities who have developed sense perception, those who have developed the sense of taste are better than those who have developed only the sense of touch. But then, better than them are those who have developed the sense of smell, and better still are those who have developed the sense of hearing. Prabhupada says, although Westerners accept that Darwin first expounded the doctrine of evolution, so the science of anthropology is not new. And then the development of the evolutionary process was known long before from the Bhagavatam, which was written 5,000 years ago. So there are records of the statement of Kapila Muni, who was present among, almost in the beginning of the creation. So this knowledge has existed since the Vedic time, and all these sequences are disclosed in Vedic literatures. And the theory of gradual evolution of anthropology is not new to the Vedas. It is said that almost among the trees, there are also evolutionary processes. The different kinds of trees have touch perceptions. It is said that better than them, the trees are the fish, because fish have developed the sense of taste. Better than the fish are the bees, who have developed the sense of smell, and better than them are the serpent, because the serpent have developed the sense of hearing. In the darkness of night, a snake can find its edible simply by hearing the frog's very pleasant cry. So the snake can understand there is a frog, and he captures the frog simply because of his sound vibration. This example is sometimes given for persons who vibrate sound simply for death. One may have a very nice tongue that can vibrate sound like the frog, but that kind of vibration is simply calling death. So the best use of the tongue and the sound vibration is to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That will protect one from the hands of cruel death. So here, antecedent is that the different kinds of descriptions of different entities, which should spell out the different kinds of relation we should have with them, all to maintain that sense of equity, to maintain that sense of concern for the mere fact that every living entity embodies the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and all as well embodies the super soul, which is present in the body of every living entity as a witness to the activities. So, and then in relation to these different categories of living entities, given to their different levels of involvement, from those who are the sense of touch to the sense of smell, and so on and so forth, describing the different kinds of relation that we should have with the different living entities. But important point is that the concern we have for every living entity, recognizing the presence of the soul, the Supreme Lord as part and parcel in them, and the presence of the Supreme Lord as the super soul in them. Okay, so we request Tama Krishna Prabhu, are you actively involved now? Can you help out with text study? As there are some questions or more points to clarify.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo Prabhuji.
Yes. Yadava Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. Test 30.
Yes.
Rupa vida vida tatra tatra chuba yato data dasambahu pada shistas jatus padas jato vipat. Translation. Better than those living entities who can perceive sound are those who can distinguish between one form and another. Better than them are those who have developed upper and lower set of teeth. And better still are those who have many legs. Better than them are the quadruped, and better still are the human beings. Purport.
Yes.
Okay. It is said that certain birds, such as crows, can distinguish one form from another. Living entities that have many legs, like the webs, are better than plants and grasses, which have no leg. 4 legs animals are better than many legs living entities, and better than the animals is the human being who has only 2 legs.
Okay, so the subsequent chapters are still dealing with the different considerations of the types of reverence and concern we should accord the different living entities based on their different levels of evolution. So now talking about those living entities who can perceive sound, and those who can distinguish between one form and another, and better than them still are those who have developed the upper and lower sets of teeth, and so on and so forth. So Prabhupada says that the important point here is that concern and regard for every living entity, irrespective of how low his level of evolution is. And this is teaching us the different status of relationship that we should have with the different living entities. But there must be concern for every living entity, irrespective of its level of evolution. Because when we because Krishna have said here in the previous, he said, whoever will neglect the reverence for the various living entities, or whoever will fail to see or recognize me as part and parcel in the embodiment of that living entity, and whoever also failed to recognize me as a super soul residing in the heart of that living entity, he says, I, in the form of death, will create fear in this mind, in the mind of such a person. So, which means that the supreme personality of God itself is quite averse to neglect of this of any living entity. So, we should all live with the understanding that every living entity is an embodiment of the part and parcel of the supreme personality of God and the super soul, and for that reason must be accorded his requisite reverence. That is his reverence according to his level of evolution. Okay, so we move on to 31. Please, is Kamalaksha Prabhu, are you with Bhavatam now? Are you in position?
Yes, I'm putting my back button now. Yes.
Okay, please, can you help out with text 31?
Tato Varasha Chadvaras Tesham Brahmana Uttamam Brahmanesu Api Vedajna He Atajno Vayadekas Tata. Translation: among human beings, the society which is divided according to quality and work is best. And in that society, the intelligent men who are designated as Brahmanas are best. Among the Brahmanas, one who has studied the Vedas is the best. And among the Brahmanas who have studied the Vedas, one who knows the actual purport of the Vedas is the best. Purport, version of Prabhupada.
Yes.
A system of 4 classifications in human society according to quality of work is scientific. This system of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras has now become vitiated as the present caste system. Yes, the system has been current a very long time, since it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Unless there is such a division of social orders in human society, including the intelligent class, the martial class, the military class, and the laborer class, there's always confusion as to who is what for what purpose. A person trained in of understanding absolute truth is a Brahmana, and when such a Brahmana is Veda, he understands the purpose of Veda. The purpose of Veda is to understand the absolute. One who understands the absolute truth in 3 phases, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and who understands the term Bhagavan to mean the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is considered to be the best of the Brahmanas or a Vaishnava.
All right, so here, still dealing with the different classifications of living entities and the kind of regard and relation we should have with them. That's finally come to the human beings. And among the human beings, the society, the society which is divided according to quality and work is best. That is, society which is divided according to quality and work, that is Vanasham. And then in that society, within the Vanasham system, the intelligent men who are designated as Brahmanas are the best. And still, among the Brahmanas, one who has studied the Vedas is the best. Still, more so, among the Brahmanas who have studied the Vedas, those who have made up to understand the actual input of the Vedas are still best. So this also has taken us back to when the scripture was giving reasons why certain devotees may fall down and why certain may not fall down. It says that the Uttama Adhikari will never fall down. Why? Because his realization of the input of the Vedic Shastra is very strong, it's rooted. So on studying the Vedas is one, understanding the input of the Vedas is another level to go. And how does one understand the input of the Vedas? It says the Vedas is revealed, is better revealed than understood by one's mental ability or by studio study. The Vedas is revealed by the super soul itself within the heart. The input of the Vedas, the philosophical input of the Vedas is revealed by the super soul, which is within the heart. So now, how is that made possible? It says, by our conscious endeavor, chapter 10, 10 of the Gita says, Tesham Tata Yuktanam says, unto those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love and devotion, say, I will give the understanding by which. At that point, the subsequent statements were all ambiguous. I will give the understanding by which they will come to me. I will give the understanding by which they will understand the input of the Vedas. So, understanding the input of the Vedas is not even vested on academic advancement, material education, advancement in material education, or whatever. It is revealed by the Lord itself. Following what? Following one's constant endeavor in serving the Lord with love and devotion. So if one is constantly serving the Lord with love and devotion, believe me, sure that the Lord will reveal the input of the Vedas to the person's understanding. So understand now, this is considered as the highest. It says, even among those who studied, even among the Brahmanas who studied the Vedas, those ones who know the actual purport of the Vedas are the best. So when we're talking about the different levels of considerations and service relation that should accord the different devotees, these are the highest devotees that should be given the highest respect. So this was what the different hierarchies of relation was meant to prove, that though we have to give this consent to every living entity, but it should be according to their different levels of evolution. And now, to those living entities who are humans and who are given to study of the scripture and who have understood the input, the purport of the Vedas, they should be accorded the highest reverence. So it is very necessary that we understudy how to give the different levels of reverence and respect to the different entities. So here, reasons why what builds one's conviction in devotional practice is one's ability to understand the input of the Vedas. And that is made possible by one's conscious and constant endeavor in trying to serve the Lord with love and devotion, as is confirmed in 10:10 of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord says, unto those who are constantly devoted in serving me with love and devotion, say, to them I will give the understanding by which they will come to me. The understanding by which they will understand the input of the Vedas, the understanding by which they will be able to conquer all that is troublesome to them, by which they will be able to acquire all that they need in their devotional service. So that understanding about what the Lord will give is ambiguous. It will give everything. We've mentioned that among the 6 symptoms of practicing pure devotional service, Kleshagni, the foremost symptom that will manifest in the body of the practitioner, instant relief from all material suffering. This is one of it. And then it follows, the Lord will also give auspiciousness when it will manifest, and auspiciousness will take away every inauspicious tendencies in the life of such a devotee. And liberation, the question for liberation will automatically accord the devotee. So all of these good qualities will manifest. So it is, and also somewhere else in back in the Gita, the Lord also says, it's only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am. Undivisional service. So all is coined at diligent discharge of devotional service to manifest all these qualities. Okay, so we move on to text 32, and here we request Rasavan is here also. Can Rasavan help us out with text 32?
Text 32, eh?
Yes, Prabhuji. Text 32, canto 3, chapter 29.
Okay. So text 32 says, Asamhare aban nanta kila lokatibra shukashru sagara vishoshanam atyudaram samohanaya vachitam nija maya yasya Brumandalam muni krite makara dwajaswa. Translation. A yogi should similarly meditate on the most benevolent smile.
That is,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
we want
I
text
think
32.
check the yes.
30.
Yes.
32.
Text 32 says, Tajana Samsaya Cheta Yata Sreyan Swakamakrit Mukta Sanga Buyam Agdoga Damam Atmana. Okay, you read the next verse. I take this. Translation says, greater than the Brahmanas, who knows the purpose of the Vedas, is he who can dissipate all doubt, and better than him is one who strictly follows the Brahmanical principles. Better than him is one who is liberated from all material contamination, and better than him is a pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation of reward. Okay. Prabhupada says that Atajana Brahmana refers to one who has made a thorough analytical study of the absolute truth and who knows the absolute truth and who knows that the absolute truth is to realize in three different phases, namely the Brahman, the Paramatma, and Bhagavan. If someone not only has the knowledge, but is able to clear all doubt, if question about the absolute truth, he is considered better. Further, there may be a learned Brahmana Vaishnava who can explain clearly and eradicate all doubt. But if he does not follow the Vaishnava principles, then he is not situated on a higher level. One must be able to clear all doubt and simultaneously be situated in the Brahmanical characteristics. Such a person who knows the purpose of the Vedic injunction, who can employ the principles laid down in the Vedic literatures, and who teaches his disciples in that way is called an acharya. So the position of an acharya is that he executes devotional service with no desire for elevation to higher position of life. So the highest perfectional brahmanas is the Vaishnava, and the Vaishnava who knows the science of the absolute truth, but is not able to preach such knowledge to others, is described as being in the lower stage, and one who not only understands the principle of the science of God, but can also preach is in the second stage, and one who not only can preach, but who also sees everything in the absolute truth, and the absolute truth is in everything, is the highest class of the Vaishnava. This is mentioned here, that the Vaishnava is already a Brahmana. In fact, the highest stage of Brahmanical perfection is reached when one becomes a Vaishnava. Okay, so here, Prabhupada says, even amidst those who have understood the input of the Vedas, but better than that, there are Brahmanas who knows the purpose of the Vedas and can dissipate all doubt. And better than them still are one who strictly follows the Brahmanical principles. Better than him is one who is liberated from all material contaminations, and better than him still is a pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation in reward. So this was gradually taking us on the ladder of pure devotional service. Anya Bila Sita Sunyam. Okay, so here, that don't forget, one of the instructions of Muni Kapila was that among specific instructions he gave to his mother, one was that the devotee must worship an acharya. And who is that acharya? That despite understanding the input of the Vedas, if one does not practice the principles of devotional service, is to be considered not to be in the highest position. So one must as well practice the principles. And if one is also practicing it, despite knowing the input of the Vedas, so if he's also practically abiding by the principles, then he becomes an acharya. And it was the acharya that has to be worshipped. Those who are living by their practical examples. So, in the consideration of the different devotees and the different levels of reverence and respect and regard that we should accord them, the highest is those ones who have understood the input of the Vedas and at the same time are also practicing them. Because we can commonly find these days, so many devotees may show up these days as being knowledgeable of the scripture. Another question is that are they also practicing it? So practicing it will come on the stance of our sincerity of purpose. If we are very sincere, we should be able to practice all that we preach. If one not only understand and does not preach, it's not in the highest position. If one understand and preach, is in the second position. If one understand, preach, and then practice it, then is an acharya. Okay, so we call again on Prabhuji. You can now take up text 33.
Okay. 33.
Yes.
Asnanmaya arpita shisha kriya tatma nirantara maya pitatmana pumsho mayi sanyasta karmana na pasyami parambutam akartuhu samadarsanat. Translation.
Yes.
Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. Purport. In this verse,
yes. First paragraph.
Okay. In this verse, the word Samad Darshanat means that he no longer has any separate interests. The devotee's interest and the Supreme Personality of Godhead's interest are one. For example, Lord Chaitanya, in the role of a devotee, also preached the same philosophy. He preached that Krishna is the worshipful Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the interest of his pure devotees is the same as his own.
All right. So here, the Muni Kapila is talking about that level of devotional service, Anya Bila Sutta Sunyam, a level where the devotee has no other desire apart from fulfilling the whims of the Lord, whatever is the desire of the Lord. And sometimes it's mentioned here in the purport, even in the second paragraph, that the Mayavadi sometimes mistook or misunderstood this oneness in desire as becoming one with the Lord in personality and opulence. No, this is becoming, Anya Bila Sutta Sunyam is rather becoming in oneness as in the Lord's desire. That is at the point where the devotee has no separate interest in discharge of his devotional service, because it is this separate interest that that discord or mitigate the quality of our devotional service. When we discharge devotional service with some personal interest, what is the interest of the constitution of the living entity originally? The living entity were made in the originality of always and always giving service to the Lord. The Lord only is the Purusha, the enjoyer of endeavors. So when we at any point in time misconstrue, put the cart before the horse, by putting ourselves in position of the enjoyer, our desire, the process of any endeavor, whether exhibited by us or by others, then things are not, at that point, things are misconstrued, things are put the other way around. So now, what happens is that the living entity at that point will begin to desire separately, satisfaction separately from the Lord. But whereas the natural constitution is that the living entity will only seek his satisfaction by satisfying the whims of the Lord. Because the Lord had naturally made it that way, that the living entity will be satisfied by giving him service. That the entire, Prabhupada gave the analogy of watering the root, that the entire plant will get its nourishment simply by watering the root. If we concentrate in watering the root, all the limbs of the plant will get their respective satisfactions accordingly. So the living entity's focus and only service is to water the root. The root is to give service to the lotus feet of the Lord. And by so doing, we, who are the tributaries, will also, in that sense, get our satisfaction accordingly. But if we want to check the supply of water to the different limbs of the plant, we will not even succeed in gaining any satisfaction, because the plant does not derive its nutrients through the limbs, but through the roots. Water is supplied to the root of the plant, and the xylem and phloem cells of the plant conduct the water to the different body cells of the plant. So this is synonymous to rendering service to the Supreme Lord, and through that service, the living entity also can derive its respective satisfaction. So if we, at any point in time, choose to do otherwise, it is even at that time that we will not even get satisfaction. So what he's saying here is that the pure devotee has no other desire apart from the desire of the Lord. Whatever is the Lord's desire becomes his desire. That's the oneness, a oneness in desire, but not oneness in the personality of God. Like Prabhupada says, sometimes the Mayavadi philosopher, due to poor form of knowledge, define that word, Sarma Dakshanat, to mean that the devotee should see himself as one with the Supreme Personality of God. This is foolishness. And when one thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of God, there is no question of serving him. When there is service, there must be a master. Three things must be present for there to be service: the master, the servant, and the service itself. So, like I said before, naturally the Lord only is the Adi Purusha, is the original recipient of every service endeavor. He says in one of the slokas of the first canto, he says that all sacrifices are meant to please him, which means that all service endeavor of the living entities in the subordinate are geared to please the Lord. And then things begin to go wrong the moment the living entity itself begin to desire the proceeds of this service other than the Lord. Okay? Else there are some questions we would love to entertain for more clarity. Otherwise, we call on His grace. Kamala Shah Prabhu, please, can you read text 34 for us? Manasani Bhutani.
Manasajani Bhutani Vana Medbahu Manaya Eshwaro Jiva Kalaya Pravisto Bhagavaniti. Translation. Such a perfect devotee offers respect to every living entity because he's under the firm conviction that the Supreme Godhead has entered the body of every living entity as the super soul. A perfect devotee, as described above, does not make or take person every living entity has become the supreme personality of God. It's fully to a room. That does not mean the room has become person. The supreme Lord has entered into each of the freedom natural body does not mean that each of these bodies become the supreme Lord. Because the supreme a pure body accepts each body as a temple of God. And since the devotees offer respect to such temple in full knowledge, he gives respect to every living entity in relationship with the Lord. I ever wrongly think that because the Supreme Person has entered the body of a former, the Lord has come the Narayana or poor Narayana. These are of
Okay, so I think at a point we weren't able to hear His Grace Kamalasha Prabhu. Maybe it could be because of internet discord. Okay, so this text is describing that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, I think after each and every one of us, after we spoke finish, we have to mute so that the line will be clear for those who are about to speak.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we have just had one observation here. Because of internet malfunctioning, we request that once somebody have finished reading, he can mute to enhance the internet productivity to allow us audience to hear who is speaking at the moment. So please, once you finish speaking, you can mute yourself. And if you mute your personal video, not mine, no. So it will also enhance your visibility to be able to connect the Zoom. This is because of a weak network projection. Okay, so because at the point we could not hear Rasavan again, at the point also we couldn't hear His Grace Kamalaksha Prabhu again. Okay, so this verse is specifically explaining that such a perfect devotee whose intention have become the Lord's intention. When we say Anya Bila Satan Sunyam, it's a stage in life where the devotee do no more nor personal efforts. I mean personal interest in whatever he's doing. Whatever he's doing becomes that which is the interest of the Lord. He has no personal interest in discharge of his devotional service. And that level we said the devotee had matched the highest level. And then, yeah, it said that despite the fact that the Lord had entered into all the 8,400,000 species of life, doesn't mean that the Lord is identifying with this body. No, because the Lord is not affected by any material situation. The Lord is aloof, despite entering into every form of life. Okay, so that the Supreme Lord has become Darida Narayan, or poor Narayan. These are all blasphemous statements of the atheists. That the supreme personality of God that inhabited the body of a poor man, therefore, is to be identified as a poor man. No, this is a misunderstanding. The supreme personality of God as a supernature, which he is not ever affected by any material situation. So we go on to text 35. I read, Bhakti Yogascha Maya Masi Udarita Yayo Ekata Renaiva Puruso Purusam Brajet. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the signs of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Good. So this comes to give the conclusion. Don't forget, the Lord also says, when the Lord, in summary, he says that whoever take into consideration all these principles, that finally it will make up, it will increase one's attraction to the lotus feet of the Lord. So it's also mentioned, it says, in this way, can achieve the abode. Said such a person will achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. So Prabhupada says, herein the Supreme Personality of God at Kapila perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of the 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of Bhakti Yoga. And it is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting posture and thinking. I think some sound are still distracting. Please, we request that Rasavan can mute his sound. Rasavan, Prabhu, please mute your sound. The rest are muted. Rasavan, is Rasavan Prabhu actively involved with us? Haribo, Rasavan Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Rasavan Prabhu.
He has gone in trance.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, so because of clearer audience, we wanted the various devotees to mute their sound.
I think the host can mute it. The host has the power to mute anybody. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. By the transcendental authority given to me, I have put everybody on mute. And I will release everybody accordingly. Okay, so here we're explaining that at the end of this practice, the Lord says that whoever does this, abide by these principles of devotional service, the benefit or the achievement will be that the person's attraction to the lotus feet of the Lord will be increased immensely. So in this very place, the Lord clarifies, oh, my dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and the mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Personality of God simply by that devotional service. So sometimes also I used to ask myself, so what is the essence of all these rigors we are undergoing in devotional service? What is going to be our benefit? What will you stand to gain that we will be able to achieve the lotus feet of the Lord at the end of life? That is the end. And Papa says, so when by meditation the Supreme Personality of God in all details one comes to the point of love of God. That is the point of Bhakti Yoga. And at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. So anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the supreme personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purusa Purusam Vrajet. The Purusa, the living entity, goes to the supreme person, the supreme personality of Godhead, and the living entity are qualitatively one. Both are defined as Purusa. So the quality of Purusa exists both in the supreme Godhead and in the living entity. The Purusa means the enjoyer, and the spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and also in the Supreme Lord. So the difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. That's why the Lord is called Adi Purusha, the original enjoyer. So the original enjoyer. So we should not misunderstand this point. When we said the tendencies of enjoyment are as well present in the body of the living entity, is because the living entity is also in the Purusha nature. But how does the living entity derives its enjoyment? The living entity, as we explained previously, the living entity derives its enjoyment by indirectly by serving the whims of the Lord. That's why the Aniabila Sitas principle is very important here. That because the original, the natural constitution of the living entity was meant to save the Lord, to give service to the Lord, but not to receive service. So, and the Lord, in giving service to the Lord also reciprocates. The Lord says, be happy as you save me. So in all of our service tendency channel towards the Lord, we also receive equal service reciprocation. We also, in that sense, also become happy by the entrust of our service. So we come in the frame of the Purusha living entity by giving service to the Lord. We come in the frame of this enjoyer as living entities by giving service to the Lord. By trying to give enjoyment to the Lord also reciprocates by giving us requisite enjoyment, respectively, at our different levels. So, in this sense, the living entity also derives its enjoyment. Okay, can Chitra Prabhu help out with text 36? Chitra Prabhu. Okay, I have to unmute Chitra Prabhu. Okay, I asked Chitra Prabhu to unmute.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So please read out text 36.
Okay. Text 36. Etat Bhagavato Rupam Brahmana Paramatmana Param Pradhanam Purusham Devam Kava Vichesitam. Translation.
Yes.
This Purusha whom the individual soul must approach is the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Brahman and Paramatma. He is the transcendental chief personality, and his activities are all spiritual.
Yes, purport.
Okay, purport. In order to distinguish the personality whom the individual soul must approach, it is described herein that this Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the chief among all living entities and is the ultimate form of impersonal Brahman effulgence and Paramatman manifestation. Since he is the origin of the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation, he is described herewith as the chief personality. It is confirmed in the Katha Upanishad, Nityo Nityanam. There are many eternal living entities, but he is the chief maintainer. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also, where Lord Krishna says, Aham Savasya Prabhava. I am the origin of everything, including the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. His activities are transcendental, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Janma Kama Chami Devyam. The personality, the activities of and the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are transcendental. They are not to be considered material. Anyone who knows this fact, that the appearance and disappearance and activities of the Lord are beyond material activities or material conception, is liberated. Yobeti tatwata chatwa deham puna janma. Such a person, after quitting his body, does not come back again to this material world, but goes to the Supreme Person. It is confirmed here. Purusham Brajet. The living entity goes to the Supreme Personality simply by understanding his transcendental nature and activities. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So in order to distinguish the personality whom the living entity must approach, to describe herein that the Purusha, the Supreme Personality of God, is a chief among all the living entities. So he's called the Adi Purusha, and also not affected by the material conditions. So even when the living entities will suffer certain dualities in this world, the Lord is aloof with. The Lord is not affected by any material dualities. Any material condition has nothing to do with the Lord. That's why the Lord associating with material nature. So it is called Adi Purusha, the original enjoyer, the original person. That means, like we explained in the previous verse, it says in one of the sloka of the first canto, it said, all sacrifices is meant to please him. It didn't say it's meant to please him and whatever. It said, ultimately, seemingly it may seem as if the living entities are living in recipients of any service, but ultimately, by fact and truth, the main service is meant to please the Lord and not the living entity. So he's the original enjoyer, the Adi Purusha. So, and he says, whoever understands this transcendental nature of the Lord upon leaving this body does not come back here again, because it's a mystery. It's a mystery. Those who have come into an understanding of the Lord's mystery does not come back to the material world. So he is then known as the Adi Purusha. Okay, thank you, Chitra Prabhu. Then we call on Madhavan Prabhu. Can you help out with? Okay, I unmute. I asked Madhavan to unmute. Madhavan, please, can you unmute and then help out with text 37?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Haribo Prabhu.
Upam Badis Padam Divyam Kalaya iti Abhidiyate Bhutanam Mahad Adinaham Yato Dina Disham Vayam. Translation.
Yes, Prabhu.
The time factor, who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead is afraid of the time factor, the purpose. Everyone is afraid of the activities of time, but a devotee who knows that the time factor is another representation of manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to fear from the influence of time. The phrase Rupa Bhate Padam is very significant. By the influence of time, so many forms are changing. For example, when a child is born in form, it's small, but in the course of time, that form changes into a larger form. The body of a boy, and then the body of a young man. Similarly, everything is changed and transformed by the time factor or by the indirect control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Usually, we do not see any difference between the body of a child and the body of a boy or a young man, because we know that these changes are due to the actions of the time factor. There is cause for fear for a person who does not know how time acts.
Haribo. Okay, so from this text, the Lord is explaining that any devotees who knows the time factor as another representation of the Lord have nothing to fear from the influence of time. And all functions of creations, maintenance, and destructions are carried out by the demigods in fear of the Lord. So the Lord himself, he says that whoever failed to understand the presence of the Lord in all the living entities will never please the Lord by his worship. Let alone the person have the best paraphernalia for the deity worship, let alone the person had executed in the best processes. But if he fails to understand the presence of the Lord in the in the embodiment of the different entities, will not please the Lord by his worship endeavors. And then said, the Lord says, in my form as the time factor, I will create fear for such devotees. And in 36 down to 45, the Lord explained that those devotees who knows the time factor as another representation of the Lord have nothing to fear. So when we see time, in the concept of time, time brings about the advent of everything, or the beginning, or coming into existence of every material facility. And time also determines the wear out of that facility. Time is going to determine the appearance of that activity. Time is going to determine the expiration of that activity. So time influences happiness and distress in the material world. We talked about the transcendental time existing in the spiritual world. When we say there is no time influences, that is, the time does not act on the time factor does not act on the people in the spiritual world, because it does not cause anything to lose its value. Here in the material world, time devalues every creation. You have a nice dress now, give it some time, the dress all becomes old and worn out. Whatever you may have within the material frame, its validity is likened to time. It is time that determines how precious that thing will remain. And the Lord says here, any devotee who would know or understand the time factor as being another representation of him, have nothing to fear from the influence of time, and that all functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction are carried out by the demigod in fear of him alone.
Hare Krishna, you can mute Madhuban. Haribo.
Okay. Madhuban Prabhu is already muted. Madhuban Prabhu doesn't want to be mute from my side. He has already done the necessary. Prabhuji is smart. Okay. All right. We request His Grace Rasavan Prabhu. Rasavan. We have Madhuban, we have Rasavan. All these denizens of Vrindavan. Rasavan
Okay.
Prabhu, my master, please, can you help out with the next text?
That's text 38.
Yes.
Okay. Yo inta pravisya bhutani uteir ati akila shaya sa Vishnu vakyo diyajyo sao kala kalayatam prabhu. Translation.
Yeah.
Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone, and he causes every being to be annihilated by another. Purport. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is clearly described in this passage. He is the supreme enjoyer, and all others are working as his servants. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 5:14, Ekale Ishwara Krishna, the only supreme Lord is Vishnu. Ara Sabha Britya, all others are his servants. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods are all servants. The same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every being through another being. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So, The Adi Purusha we said before is the only Supreme Lord. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is clearly described in this passage. He is the Supreme Enjoyer, and all other are working as his servants, as stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That we said that that is the natural constitution. That's how Krishna had made things originally. Krishna has made the living entity to be his service giver. That's natural constitution. And he also admit that the living entities will only derive their enjoyment, their satisfaction by serving him. So that is the natural process. Any other thing aside from that is a misconstrue. We are going to alter the natural settings of nature and things will never go right. So here is the Adi Purusha here, the original enjoyer. The Adi Purusha, and this is confirmed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ekale Ishwara Krishna, the only Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Ara Sabha Hritaya, all other are his servants. And Lord Brahma, Shiva, and other demigods are all servants. So the same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every living being through another. He causes the annihilation of every living being through another. What do we understand by that? Sometimes we, out of ignorance, we seem to see other living entities as being the cause of our misfortunes, as if as programmed by nature. The so-called people we look up to as being our enemy, as being the cause of our misfortune, as being the cause of our destruction or things not going on in our way, are only instruments. But the original planner is the Lord here, as is mentioned here. It says, the same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every living being through another. Example are the Yadavas. When the Lord was winding up his pastime and he has to go, he looked at the situation that the Yadavas were all his manifestations, and no ordinary human being can destroy the Lord. Only the Lord can destroy the Lord. So he set up a drama for the Yadavas that they can, when they engage in it, they will be able to annihilate their generations. So sometimes we have to take responsibility for our shortcomings or misfortunes in life, because our misfortune have come as a result of our past misdeeds. So when it comes like that, certain living entities may be set forth as instruments to fulfilling those consequences in our life. Those people who have come forth to play those rules are not actually the cause. The cause is the Adi Purusha. The Adi Purusha has programmed it that way and have put forth certain living entities to become instrumental to fulfilling those cause in our lives. Okay. So I myself, I take up text 39 as swift as possible. Na chaya kasit daito na dueso nascha bandava avisati aparamato sao paramatam janma antakrit. No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is anyone's, and no one is anyone. I mean, I take it again. No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor is anyone his enemy or friend, but he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him and destroy those who have. Papa Prabhupada says, forgetfulness of one's relationship with the Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a cause of one's repeated birth and death. And a living entity is as eternal as the Supreme Lord. But due to his forgetfulness, he is put into this material nature and transmigrate from one body to another. And when the body is destroyed, he thinks that he is also destroyed. But actually, this forgetfulness of his relationship with Lord Vishnu is the cause of his destruction. So anyone who receives his consciousness of the original relationship receives inspiration from the Lord. So this does not mean that the Lord is someone's enemy or someone's else friend. He helps anyone who is not bewildered by the influence of material energy is saved, and one who is bewildered is destroyed. So it is said, therefore, Harim Vina Naiva Sritim Taranti. No one can be saved from the repetition of birth and death without the help of the Supreme Lord. It is therefore the duty of all living entities to take shelter of the lotus feet of Vishnu and thus save themselves from the cycle of repeated birth and death. So the Lord is no one's enemy, is no one's friend. As some people may think that maybe the Lord is favorable to just some people and then unfavorable to some. The Lord is just, he said, I'm not partial to anyone, but the Lord is easily disposed to those who are obedient to him. Like you mentioned in 10:10. 10:10 says that unto those who are constantly devoted to serving the Lord with love and devotion, he will give them the intelligence. He will give them all the requisite facilities to access him. So here, the nature of the living entity is explained here to be eternal. The living entity, because the living entity has that it inherited that eternality from the Supreme Personality of God by dint of being part and parcel of his nature. The living entity in his original nature is eternal. Like in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it says that the soul is never cut into pieces. It is not slain when the body is slain. It is not cut when the body is cut. The soul does not diminishes. It does not die. All of this, the Lord was talking about the nature, the original nature of the soul as depicting his own nature, because the soul is part and parcel of the Lord. If should the soul be cut into pieces, that means the body of the Lord can equally be cut into pieces. So because of the living entity's forgetfulness of his originality of nature, he has been placed under this bewilderment. That when he changes body from one body to another, he comes to think that his body, in that sense, is also lost its originality. No, he maintains his originality. The same soul keep moving from one body to another. And then whoever have come short of this enlightenment, the Lord says he will give him the understanding. As I says, he said, he helps anyone who is not bewildered by the influence of material nature. So whoever have been able to surmount the influence of this material nature is safe. Okay, I take also text 40. Yat bhavat vati vato yam sayasta pati yat bayat vasate devo baguno pati yat bayat. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of God, the wind blows. Out of fear of him, the sun shines. Out of fear of him, the rain pours forth showers. And out of fear of him, the hosts of heavenly bodies shed their lustres. The Lord states in the Bhagavad Gita, Maya yaksane prakriti suyate. Nature is working under my direction. The foolish person thinks that nature is working automatically, but such an atheistic theory is not supported in the Vedic literature. Nature is working under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. And also find here that the sun shines under the direction of the Lord, and the cloud pours forth showers of rain under the direction of the Lord. All material phenomena are under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So everything, that everything works under the superintendent, under the direction of the Lord. Nothing works of his own accord. And because the Lord takes superintendence, the Lord is in charge. My Guru Maharaj always used to say, he says, I haven't known that Krishna is in charge. What do I fear? What do I fear? So sometimes we forget this and begin to nurse fear for lesser powers. Whereas by originality, it is the Supreme Personality of God that is superintendent over every power. The Lord is in charge of every situation in life. Therefore, as a devotee, we have nothing to fear, nothing absolutely to fear, because when we say supreme, the supremacy of Krishna means is in charge of everything. And in the dispense of every activity he takes superintendence. If he does not permit any activity, he has the authority to withhold any functionality. And if he does not permit any activity, nothing can function. So this has to be properly understood in our memory. I take also text 41, except there are some questions or points to clarify further. Yadvana pastato beta latas chasadi bi saha swe kale di bring nati uspani cha falanis chaha. Translation says, out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. The sun, and Prabhupada says, as the sun rises and sets, and the seasonal changes ensures at their appointed times by the superintendents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the seasonal plants, flowers, herbs, and trees all grows under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is not that plants grows automatically without any cause, as the theistic philosophers say. Rather, they grow in the pursuance of the supreme order of the Supreme Personality of God. It is confirmed in the Vedas, in the Vedic literature, that the Lord's diverse energies are working so nicely that it appears that everything is being done automatically. So all the diverse energies of the Lord, the demigod in charge of the various functionalities, are all working no else than under the direction of the Supreme Personality of God. It says the devotee who knows the time factor as another representation of the Lord have nothing to fear from the influence of time, and all functions of creation, maintenance, destruction, creation, maintenance, and destruction are carried out by the demigod in fear of the Lord. So here you can see that when the Lord says he is the superintendent of every manifestation, this should build the height of confidence in the mind of devotees. We should know that the Lord we save is in charge of every situation, and if he does not permit any activity, it will not happen. Being in charge means is a built-up faith for the devotees, and whoever have understood this will have nothing to fear. The sun, in short, all manners of creation, the rain, the food grain, the plant, all conduct themselves under the direction of the Lord. Okay, I take also text 42. Sravanti Saritu Bita No Ta No Sa Papi Udahiyati Agni Indehi Sa Giribi Buna Majati Yat Basyat. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow and the ocean never overflow. Out of fear of him only does fire burn, and does the earth with its mountain no sink in the waters of the universe. In purple process, we can understand from the Vedic literature that this universe is half filled with water, on which Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is lying. From his abdomen, a lotus flower has grown, and within the stem of the lotus flower, all the different planets exist. Then the material scientist explains that all these different planets are floating because of the laws of gravity or some other laws. But the actual lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we speak of law, we must understand that there must be a lawmaker. The material scientists can discover laws of nature, but they are unable to recognize the lawmaker. So from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we can know who the lawmaker is. The lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said here that the planet do not sink since they are floating under the order or energy of the Supreme Godhead. They do not fall down into the water, which covers half the universe. So all the planets are heavy with their various mountains, seas, oceans, cities, places, palaces and buildings. And yet they are floating. It is understood from this passage that all the other planets that are floating in the air have oceans and mountains similar to those on this planet. So the antecedent here is that all the workings of the material world are all going on and doing so and conducting themselves perfectly, only following the directives of the Supreme Personality of God. Because out of fear of the Lord's superintendence, all these different agencies of nature are conducting themselves. That the so-called lawmakers have felt, material scientists who are discovering the laws in nature, have felt understood that behind the law is the lawmaker, is the propounder of the law. And the original propounder of the law is no one else than the Supreme Personality of God. All the universes are sustained within the stem of the lotus flower growing from the abdomen of the Lord. As the stem of this lotus flower grows upward towards swallow, within the framework of the stem emanates different planetary systems and are sustained by the universal gravity. Though material scientists think it to be of different gravitational forces, not knowing the sustainer of these gravities in originality to be no one else than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Lord Himself sustained the universes. The Lord Himself sustained all these manifestations, okay? So without hesitation, can we quickly read out text 43. So here, Tama Krishna Prabhu, please can you read text 43? Have I unmuted you?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. Nabo dadati swasatam padam yam niyaman nata ada lokan swadiham tanuti mahasabdabhiri abritam. Subject to the controller of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allow outer space to accommodate all the various planets, which hold innumerable living entities, the total universal body, expand with its 7 coverings under his supreme control.
Okay, I take the purport.
Okay.
I take the purport. It is understood from this verse that all the planets in outer spaces are floating, and they are all whole living, and they all whole living entities. So the word Shwasatam means those who breathe, or the living entities. In order to accommodate them, there are innumerable planets. Every planet is a residence for innumerable living entities, and the necessary space is provided in the sky by the supreme order of the Lord. So it is stated here that the total universal body is increasing. It is covered by 7 layers, and as there are water elements within the universe, so the total element in layers covers the outside of the universal body. The first layer is of the earth, and it is 10 times greater in size than the space within the universe. So the second layer is water, and that is 10 times greater than the earthly layer. A third covering is fire, which is 10 times greater than the water covering. It is in this way, each layer is 10 times greater than the previous one. So I think in our previous discussions, we have discussed the various layers of the universe and their densities. And we said that each layer is 10 times greater than the previous. Each layer of the universe is 10 times greater than the previous. First, you have the water 10 times greater greater in density than fire. And then fire 10 times greater than air, and so on and so forth. So in this way, we have the first layer as the earth, and the earth with water being the earth, all the qualities. And then next we have the waters, the sound, the touch, form, the taste, and so on, 10 times greater than, the water is 10 times greater than earth, fire is 10 times greater than water, air is 10 times greater than fire, sky is 10 times greater than air, and then we have sound, and so on and so forth. So in this manner, each layer is 10 times greater than the previous. So what essence here is that what the verse is explaining here is that the subsequent manifestations of the earth are all conducting themselves under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. That it says, subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of God, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets. So every aspect of life is simply acting under the direction or the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. Like I said before, my Guru Maharaj often said, knowing the Lord to be in supreme control, what do I fear? What do I have to fear? And he says, whoever have known this have conquered fear. When you know that one who is standing by you is superior, automatically it should disperse all manners of fear from your being. Okay? All right, so next we call on the next person. Tama Krishna Prabhu is here. Can you help out with text 44? Have I
Text
unmuted?
44.
Yes.
Guna bina nino deba.
Sorry, hold on, 1 minute. Is it text 44, the next text? No? Am I right?
Yes, text 44.
Okay.
Shall I go on?
Yes, go on, please. I was just trying to confirm
Muna
something.
bina nino deba sagadisu Asia ya bayat batla balante no yugam yasam bisaita charam. Out of fear of the supreme personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the mode of material nature carried out the function of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything emanates and inanimate within this material world is under their control. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Oh, please go on with the
Yeah.
purport, please.
Okay.
The three modes of material nature.
The three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, are under the control of the three deities, Brahman, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness. Lord Brahman is in charge of the mode of passion. And Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments, so within this material world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all those departments function in proper order out of fear of the law of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Demigods undoubtedly control all material. Demigods undoubtedly control all matters, inanimate and inanimate, within the universe. But above them, the supreme controller is the personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Ishwaram Paramam Krishnam. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the department management of this universe, but the supreme controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendency of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So all this is still explaining the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of God, that even the different demigods in charge of the moods of material nature all carried out their functions of creations, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within the material world under his control and his control only. So everything here, this explains the exhibit of every action as only being done under the authority of the Supreme Personality of God. So when we say supreme, the supremacy of Krishna should be understood to this tense, that with this supremacy, the Lord permits every activity. The Lord restricts every action. So the control one is with the Lord, and only him. This is the more reason why it's called the Supreme Lord, because the superintendence, the authority for any action to take place within this universe and the universes is under the Lord. And more so, the Lord is so conversant. Conversant in the sense that he's very, very active and sensitive to everything that happens, not only in this universe, but in all the innumerable universes. There are uncountable universes, as is mentioned here. It says there are two kinds of dissolution. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. And as long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. So as long as Brahma does not die, it so continues the creations of different universes. So the universes you think is so uncountable that you cannot fathom. But one uniqueness is that the Supreme Lord, who maintains supremacy over all these universes, is very, very conversant and alert to every bit of thing that happens in each and every universe. Why? Because through its all-pervasive nature, as a super soul, it pervades. It has, as the Abu Dakasai Vishnu is lying in all of the universes in the Milk Ocean. It has also entered into all the universes, and as a super soul is also present in the body of all the living entities in all these universes. And so this coordinates is awareness and alertness about everything that happens in every universe. So here we come to the last text of this very Kapila Siksha 1, text 45. And here we request His Grace Kamalaksha Prabhu. I request you to unmute and then help us out with the last text. Text 45. Kamalaksha Prabhu, is he actively involved with us here?
Yes.
Okay, Prabhu. There was a hand raised on Bhakti Academy for Culture and Education. Oh, sorry, we discovered this late. Bhakti Academy for Culture and Education, do you have some information for us? We're about ending the class. No, sir. Okay, go on with text 45. That's the last step.
Translation. Has no beginning and no end. The maker of the criminal, it brings out the work of creation, bringing one individual to existence from another. Likewise, it results the universe destroying the God Yamara. But influence of the time is representative of the supreme system. The life of the time to provide the time the words all the last for 100 years and more, and similarly, although the lives, let me go to no one.
Okay, are we hearing Kamalaksha Prabhu? Haribo Prabhuti.
Hello?
Yes, I request you mute Prabhu Rasavan. Mute Prabhu Rasavan, please.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I is muted because at a point some other sound was quite too distracting. Okay, so here brings us to the last text of this very session. The eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is the representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of the criminal world. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the works of creation and bringing one individual into existence from another. And likewise, it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Purpose says, by the influence of eternal time, which is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father begets the Son, and the Father dies by the influence of cruel death. But by time's influence, even the Lord of cruel death is killed. In other words, all the demigods within the material world are temporary like ourselves. Our lives last for 100 years at the most. And similarly, although their lives may last for millions and billions of years, the demigods are not eternal. No one can live within the material world eternally. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. A devotee desires only the service. Desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally. The servitor exists eternally. And the service exists eternally. Thus ends the Bhakti purport of the 3rd canto, 29th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the matter entitled Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapil. Okay, so here he explains the existence of the previous verse says for service to exist, there must be service, there must be the giver of service, and there must also be the recipient of service. So in this context, for service to take place, all these three must come together. And the Adi Purusha, the original recipients of service is the Supreme Lord. The original giver of service are the living entities. And while the living entities are also considered as Purusha, are that the Lord had originally made it, construed it in a form that when the giver will give service, he himself also will be able to reap service satisfaction from his entrust of service. So we also derive our respective satisfaction by our respective service endeavors. As we try to serve the whims of the Lord, equally we also get our satisfaction from it. So here, all detail on the Lord's supremacy over every aspect of life. The Lord takes charge. And the Lord is so cognizant, so sensitive to everything that happens in every nooks and crannies of the universe. He is present there as the super soul. He is present there in the embodiment of every living entity. He's also lying there as Gabodakasaya Vishnu, permitting creation. And he says that both the living entity and the Lord itself are all eternal. A living entity does not die on the cause of his changing body, by dint of his being part and parcel of the Lord. And the Lord also, the creation continues, and he talked about the awake of Brahma, that Brahma, the final dissolution comes when Brahma itself dies. That brings the creation of a particular universe to an end, to restart again by the Lord's authority. Because the Lord says that so far as he is eternal, the living entities are also eternal, and the service attitude is also eternal. It continues. It doesn't end at the date of Brahma. At the date of Brahma is only there to bring forth the creation of the beginning of another creation, where everything again takes on afresh. Everything comes back to being. And the material world one was at a certain time asking, when will the material world come to an end? No, it doesn't come to an end. The material world is also eternal, because at every point in time, there is bound to be creation, there is bound to be maintenance, there is bound to be annihilation. And at every point in time, the living entities might prove deviant. So they must have they must have a resort where they could be sent to for their rehabilitation of mentality and consciousness. Okay, so here the Lord explains that the Lord maintains his supremacy as the superintendent of every action, that every action is permitted by him by the influence of the eternal time, which is the representative of the supreme personality of God. The Father begets the Son, and the Father dies, and by the influence of cruel death, but by time's influence, even the Lord of death, of the cruel death, is killed. That is Yamaraj, that even according to the influence of this eternal time, brings about the death of even the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, because even the demigods are also working under the Lord's superintendence. The demigods are also working under the Lord's order. So even Yamaraj, it comes to a certain time that he has to drop the body and takes on again. And by dint of the living entity's activity, one ascends a particular status or situation in life, whether ascending the position of the demigod or whatever. It depends on the account of one's previous action. So at this point, we wish to end Kapila Siksha part 1, bordering on the inquiries of Devi Devahuti to Muni Kapila. Inquiries about what she has to do to cut out attachment and affinity for material life. So in this quest, the Lord also gives the responses that is only through pure devotional service that she can be able to break this bond of material attachment. And by so doing, the Lord begin to explain the intricacies of devotional service. What starting with the do's, the don'ts, and the Lord first started with the Sankhya philosophical system, thereby coming to pure devotional service and where the practitioner must surrender everything in the service of the Lord and maintains only but the Lord's desire without nursing any personal interest or profit in the discharge of his services. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the third canto, 29th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. Hare Krishna. So I want to sincerely beg for your forgiveness for taking into the extra 24 minutes of our time. We're supposed to have end of this class by 12 on the dot, but for some reasons or the other, which is above our control, this class have extended till this time. Therefore, I submissively beg for your forgiveness, and I say, please, don't be offended that we have extended this class for some extra 20 minutes. I know a lot of us has other engagement to resort to. And I want to also appreciate all of us who have made out time from a busy schedule. Okay, wait 1 minute. I have to unmute everyone. Okay, I didn't. I am unmuting everybody. I'm asking the various persons to unmute so that they can be able to make their useful comments here. Okay. So I want to commend all of us who have found time to follow up with the train of these classes right from the beginning now. There's a hand raised here by Bhakti Academy. I don't know whether we can have Bhakti Academy. If Bhakti Academy, then we have your hand raised.
Academy is yourself.
Okay, yeah, we used to have two Bhakti Academy. I'm a co-host. Okay. Okay, I lower the hand. So I was in the front to compliment and to thank sincerely all of us who have followed through the trend of these classes from beginning to the end. And it is gracious that we have tarried through amidst the different difficulties to the end of this class. Therefore, I say thank you very much and remain blessed by the Guru Parampara. Hare Krishna. So I don't know whether anybody has some questions or comments to make. Otherwise, we share the Mantra Taupa and we can end the class.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, so we just have to thank you for being so tolerant and very detailed in how you gave us this lecture, taking so much trouble for our satisfaction. So we are really grateful. And we pray that all will be well with you. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
I am even much grateful for the opportunity you have given to me to render a bit of services, even though not perfectly. As the Gita says that we should try to live within the confines of our prescribed duty, that for performing one's prescribed duty, even though not perfectly, it is gracious. So I'm grateful. And I'm also especially grateful to my first class student, His Grace Kamalaksha Prabhu. His presence has been very, very scarce. So today being a very auspicious day, Krishna has bring his presence. He has decided to abandon other important services to be with us. Prabhu, we are blessed by your glorious presence. And also not forgetting my great master, His Grace Rasavan Prabhu, who is also here. Rasavan Prabhu is one of those who have been very, very scarce. So today being a very auspicious day, so Krishna have created some special reasons in their mind that they be part of this class, the very last class we have as regard Kapila Siksha part 1. So I also encourage that the students also should go home with these few homeworks that will help their Purvaswa, their open book questions. And then one is that we request that under the context of preaching applications, the students should try to, we gave some assignment the other time, but students did not turn up on the full to subsequent class to tender their efforts in attempting those questions. So the few were there, we do the assessment. Yes, and we give the necessary advices. So for today, ending this class, we want you to go with the following. Everybody got all the questions together. One is under the context of preaching application, find out the characteristics of mixed and pure devotional service that you can find out within the range of text 8 to 13. Next is, what is the separatist mentality like? What is the separatist mentality like? So you can give a brief. Yes. Can you give a preaching application of the separatist mentality? Another one is, we wish that you recommend activities of a devotee on the intermediate platform. This can also be coined from text 16 through 18. Then for question bordering on mood and mission, say mood and mission of Prabhupada. What was Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission when he was making this statement? Under mood and mission, you find out the Lord is pleased with compassionate devotees between text 5 and 6 of chapter 29, all of chapter 29. text 5 and 6. As you read through it, you should be able to come up with mood and mission of Prabhupada on the statement, the Lord is pleased with compassionate devotees. Next is deity worship and seeing the Lord's presence everywhere. This could be understood within text 21 through 24. Next is devotees are expected to carry the message of Lord to conditioned soul. This is a message that is given to encourage our Sankirtan parties. Devotees are expected to carry the message of the Lord to conditioned souls. Mood and mission. When Prabhupada made this statement in his purport, what was his mood and mission as regards this? The last one is distribution of prasadam is essential for persons who make offerings to the Lord. So this you can get from text 24. The previous was from text 23. The previous was devotees are expected to carry the message of the Lord to conditioned souls. That is from text 23. And the last one, distribution of prasadam is essential for person who makes offerings. There's some sound glitch. Is somebody trying to say something? Can you show by hand indication, and then we can mute all the rest of the people so that you can have a clear audience? Yes, is somebody trying to say something? Can you show by raise of hand?
The questions again.
Okay, I take it again. One was bordering on preaching application, that you have to present your responses to depict preaching application. So by preaching application, we want you to demonstrate the characters of mixed and pure devotional service. So when you read through the text passage of 8 through 13, you're going to get facts about that. And second one was, what is the mentality of the separatists? The separatist mentality. This should be presented in a preaching application mood. And the last one is recommended activities of a devotee on the intermediate platform. What are the recommended activities of a devotee on the intermediate platform? Preaching application. Next one is about mood and mission. Mood and mission. And we say mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada. So when Prabhupada made this statement in his purport, what have you found out to have been his mood and mission? One is, Prabhupada made the statement, Lord, the Lord is pleased with compassionate devotees. Two, are you following? Hare Krishna.
Yes, but can you share?
Are we having audience?
Please, if you could share.
Please come again about that.
Yeah, it would be appropriate better more if you could share.
Okay, I can send the questions on the platform.
If you in a
Okay, yeah, because the device I'm using is the phone. If it's a laptop, I will have the facility to share the soft copy. And you can take it from the slide.
Okay, then if you could later draft it, then share it on the platform, then we pick it from there. Then we go
Okay,
to
yes, I
some
will
of
do
the
that.
things.
I will do that immediately. I will do that immediately. Okay, begging your permissions, I request to end this class for all, and after which I will share the questions to the platform for clarity. Jai Vancha Karpa Tarjascha, Kripa Sindhu, Ashtanam Pavanam, Vashnava Vindaki, Jai. Vashnava Thakur ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for blessing me. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity that I can also have some service participation. I'm grateful. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Bol.